fascinating world of spirit guides. Who are spirit guides? What do they do? How can you connect with them? We're also going to talk about the concept of soul families, which means soulmates, twin flames, and dead relatives. We're going to help you identify what your guides are and help you grow and evolve tonight on Bleeding Out Loud.
There are so many people that are disconnected from their internal guidance. My mission is to change that.
I don't just talk stuff and repeat stuff. I'm living this stuff.
I'm your tarot master and bad vibe blaster.
And you can thank me for covering your astro.
Welcome to LOL Reading Out Loud.
Oh, we have no mic. Yeah, we have no mic.
Oh,
okay, now we have guy. Come on in, God.
Welcome to LOL Leading Out Loud, where we aim to become your favorite spiritual shift show on Earth. Joining me is our motley mystical crew, beginning with representing the angels in heaven, angel communicator Devon Duerr, calling in powers of the tarot cards, and the ancient occult, tarot master Reck, speaking for and to the dead, psychic medium Cruz, and giving voice to the astrology and planets, psychic astrologer Witecki.
Thanks, God. On today's show, sorry about that, y'all. We are getting the tech down here. It's not easy getting a cord all the way to heaven, but we are getting a live stream up there. On today's show, we're going to talk about spirit guides and soul family trees. It's a topic we're all excited to talk about because part of this show has always been sort of bringing you backstage to what we do, because there's a lot of questions about how it really works. So tonight we're going to talk about spirit guides, and we're going to talk about how you can identify yours and begin to communicate with yours or affirm that you already are. But first, our psychic surf report on the energy of the week. Now, I do want to say, just from a simple theme, we are in the high seas of Cancer. High seas of Cancer means that sometimes you feel like it, sometimes you don't. You kind of are slave to your feelings during this season. This week, I believe astrologically, what the planets are saying is that we're going to commit to a new home. And when I say new home, that can be literal, but if not literal, it's your emotional home you live in inside of you. The astrology is saying that we have grown so much this year in 2024 that we no longer have the right emotional home inside of ourselves for us to move forward and ascend. So it's pretty much a quiet week as far as big astrological events are concerned, but there's a lot of emotional up and downs as we're processing what we want our life to feel like next. So it's kind of an explorative week emotionally. What are you guys picking up on?
Definitely exploratory. I mean, I'm getting that we still have too much going on at once. There's something we need to make a decision about, something that we got that guidance last week, but we're feeling challenged to make time for those around us, or we're feeling challenged to just take a more playful approach to something. Maybe you're forcing something too much. And another thing that the angels want us to watch out for is crying over spilled milk. Is there something we could look for the silver lining in something? Because a lot of us have been pretending there's not a problem, or maybe we've addressed it, but we still are just kind of stuck in that energy of, man, why did I let that happen? Why did I stay in that situation too long? So now it's time to bring balance to that situation, look for a compromise. Now we're not settling, but we're compromising. And they want you to trust that if you try to figure out what that decision is for you, that's going to bring in the good news going forward into the following week. And you'll get a lot of personal power from your self-discipline. What are you getting, Scott?
I mean, I think that, today is like this week is more about reflection, about where you've come from, right, in the past week, and kind of seeing the differences between where you've been and where you're at now and where you're going. So I think it's kind of like seeing your timeline, past, present, future, kind of as a whole right now. And so, and I think there does involve some playfulness and that as well, because then when you start seeing the bigger picture, you don't take things so seriously. And so I think even during this time, might be a lot of people picking at you, people not you, kind of like giving you a hard time because you might be feeling that kind of, serendipitous nature, and some people don't like that. And so I think that's more of an evidence that you are living in your truth, and that, have fun with it. Like you were saying, Devin, it's very similar to that. Not taking things so seriously. Because when you see the bigger picture, you realize, maybe I've been taking things too literal in my life instead of more symbolic. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I would call this emotional initiative. We have the Nine of Wands and the King of Cups. So King of Cups is a card of the home. And, I actually call him a clue card for the home. So I think that emotionally, it's all about kind of where your foundation is and kind of having a solid emotional foundation. And I get something on the Nine of Wands about initiative, taking initiative on something that feels right. Devin actually kind of said this, talking about like wounds or challenges. He's the wounded warrior. So I think leaving those things in the past and moving forward on something that you've wanted to take action on that could fulfill you emotionally would be a really good idea with those two cards.
Well, that sounds like a new home, like to take on, a new emotional perspective on life. I personally believe that, this is getting maybe too deep, but I feel like up until now, our entire life has been healing and awakening and finding our patterns and finding our karma and, coming out of victimhood and coming out of all this stuff. And so we really don't have a home, like an emotional life built for success. As Americans, probably as humans, I think we're traumatized everywhere. So this is really, to me, about like, how do you emotionally support yourself for your success? I think in the past, we emotionally support ourselves to not fail or to not go back into our old rhythms. But now it's like, okay, now I need to really support myself for what I want to do. That's right. What
And like you said about finding a new home, you have to apply structure and organization to have a good foundation for this new home as well. And sometimes that means taking a different perspective and cutting your losses. Maybe you did have the house plans all drawn up in a certain way, and it's time to go back to the drawing board, start all over again, and allowing yourself that chance to look at this differently. That's going to really help you if you have that self-discipline there. In fact, I have a pocket affirmation for everybody here to help with this energy. If you want to write it in the comments below, I am driven and determined. I am driven and determined. That will help us get to that playful energy, which we have Venus going to Leo at the end of the week, right, Christopher?
We do on Thursday at 10:18 a.m.
Yeah. So
East Coast time. Well, I think it's going to feel good. I think Venus in Cancer is really making us it's impossible to ignore certain feelings. I think some feelings too are just on auto repeat and we're just catching them and going, why am I going there again? Because emotions are very, what's the word? Habitual. Because they kind of form our comfort. And so we're expecting something to go wrong or we're expecting different things. I think we're catching some of those those little moments as we sort of craft our feelings. But overall, we're going to go into Leo. So I believe that in this Leo season coming up around the corner, I believe our hearts are going to wish for something we've never wished for before. I feel like and I think people are going to be surprised. And I bring it up because once you feel good about your life or your situation, then your heart suddenly wants things that it wasn't asking for before. So I think this emotional work, although dreary and not fun, is important.
I was gonna say something about like, what if there's something better? I kind of got that feeling when everyone went around. It's like you're holding on to something. Nine of Wands. He's not really holding on to anything, but it's like what is outside of everything that you've experienced. It's almost like everybody thinks what they've experienced is the best that they can get right now. But what if there's better?
So true. You're like people always use. That's why AI sucks. It's ingested everything from the past.
Yeah.
How are you going to tell me? What if it's something we never thought of before?
Yeah.
I think you're right. I do feel that for many, I was going to bring up this point too. The sun will trine Saturn on Wednesday at 19 degrees Pisces. The relevancy of that is literally emotionally breaking away from the old spiritual cycle and emotionally creating a new spiritual cycle. So we literally create a new emotional aspect of our new spiritual cycle is what happens this week. So we literally are sort of switching, I think, timeline tracks. And one thing I have noticed, a lot of family karma coming up. And that's not, it's in my family, but others. And I think that's because of the sun trining Saturn and Pisces, because the Pisces energy is like karma. And where does karma start? In the family. So we're emotionally letting go of our karma right now as well, or our responses.
I'm wondering if we're going to revisit any of the stuff from Venus retrograde in Leo last summer, because it was in Leo for such a long time. And I saw so many people go through powerful transformation with that. Are we going to be revisiting some of that, Christopher?
I don't feel we'll revisit it. What's interesting is when I thought of this show when Venus was in Leo, that retrograde.
Oh, yeah.
It was a change of heart. I had a huge creative inspiration. I realized it was time to be entertaining and not just infotaining. And so I had a real change of heart creatively with Venus retrograde in Leo. What's interesting, we have Mars retrograde in Leo.
Yeah.
At the end of the year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so I'm curious about what that is, because if we're coming up with something our heart wants now, what happens when Mars goes through Leo? Like usually when Mars goes through Leo, when Mars retrogrades in Leo, we change what we chase after.
Right.
Like what our heart chases after. So it's a change of heart. So it could be that we think we want something in August, and then after the elections, we're like, no, change of heart.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll see how it unfolds. It's interesting.
Yeah. So keep track, everybody at home. We want to hear what happens for you.
And I'll say this as well. Please post your questions that you have throughout the chat through the entire show. We're going to collect them and we're going to shoot the shift at the end of the show. We'll bring back those questions, but we're finding that we're not getting questions in the right segments. So if you got a question for us, put it out there at any time. All right. Thanks. And we will ignore you. Moving on. On today's show, I'm super excited. We are going to be talking about what we call our spirit guides. And I'll just open up this topic here. Now, spirit guides, I'll just give a simple definition. There are people that do nothing but hang out on the other side and talk to the living. I don't know why. It must be a career or something in heaven, but a lot of people do it. And there is guidance all the way up, from what I understand, as far as spirit guides. In other words, angels have spirit guides. And I think whoever their spirit guides have spirit guides. And whoever their spirit guides, God has, from what I understand, a whole hierarchy of people working through heaven. And, we'll all talk about what we think spirit guides are. I personally feel like I talk to my guides. I talk to angels. I talk to ascended masters. They're on different levels of heaven and different dimensions. And I think that's where and dead people and sometimes aliens. Those are my guides. What about you folks?
Well, Chris Reck, you go first.
Well,
I guess I should throw. Reck,
personally, I
what's
really
your
don't
belief
work.
about guides?
I don't work with guides, personally. So, I always say I take a shamanistic approach to reading tarot. So I don't allow anything into my space, like literally in here. Right. But now outside of that, I think that mostly I get communication like in my dreams, right when I'm waking up. That's when I have like the weirdest dreams, or dreams where I feel like something is talking to me, even though I can never remember what they say. And also, I think something people forget about is getting messages from things that are like seemingly disconnected. Like I can't tell you how many times I'll watch a TV show, I'll read something in a book or whatever, right, and then like something happens later that was exactly what I was reading about or exactly what I saw on TV. Right. So, that's how I think that my guides work with me, is through like showing me things, and then I do something later that I always regret because I don't listen to it, and then I think my guides are probably up there laughing.
Yeah, my guide said they are.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
That's funny. Scott, what's your guide?
Well, I see guides differently. I see guides like brother and sisterhood. We have many spirits that we're connected to, first ancestral. We have our own spirit guides that work with us in this physical world. We have guides that actually from previous lifetimes that we connect in. And we have guides that are actually in human form too. So I think that every connection of spirit that we have, both in the incarnation and outside the incarnation, is guides for us. And I think, like Chris was mentioning before about, your universe, synchronicity, that's guides too. Everything that's happening as a result of your walk of this life is a guide for you. So I tend to be similar to Chris. I kind of focus on my own soul as information connected to source. But every now and then when I need inspiration from a brother or sister, I definitely reach out to a spirit guide or ancestral guide too. So there's different layers of that. It's all family to me. Devon, what do you think?
Family for sure. Well, I have a little bit of a distinction in the way it feels to me when I'm connecting with my guides. Because again, also when I am doing a reading, when I'm sharing angel messages, I set a prayer protection and intention that I'm only connecting to the highest vibrational source and angels. So it's similar with you guys, Scott and Chris, where I'm not letting them into my space for that part. But my guides will chime in when I'm not paying attention. They're like right there with me all the time. I'm doing the dishes and they crack a joke about my bad attitude that I'm having in my mind, and then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I got you. You got my attention. Or they'll show up for me in a certain form when I'm needing to remember to draw on my inner courage. So I do feel differently when I connect with my guides. And another thing that Reck said that will happen with my guides is connecting the dots, like things that seem totally unrelated. They will show me repetitive ways to connect the dots with the messages. So it's really more like my guides are working with me, just me personally, guiding me and getting my attention when I'm getting a little too ethereal or I'm just not even connecting. What about you, Christopher?
Well, for me, it's pretty okay. In the very beginning, knowledge just came out of nowhere. I had no idea where it was coming from. And I had for a long time had to trust that I knew things that I knew I didn't know. So I remember when I was a kid, I thought I was lying. I was like, I hope I'm not lying. I was real worried about it because I'd have answers come out of nowhere and they seemed so accurate. Even my dad as a kid, I used to look up, like if he asked me a question, I'd look up. He's like, why do you look up every time I ask you a question? Now I think I was actually looking at my guides like, guys, what the fuck answer? I don't think I was aware of it. As I started doing readings, I definitely noticed a very powerful voice that came in. I later found out that that's usually Archangel Ratziel. So I was able to identify that Ratziel always comes in for me and gives me their past lives. And he gives me the architecture of their story and where they are this life and their story and whatnot. So he feeds. I think we all have a guide, whether you want to use them or not. And so a lot of times when I'm in a reading, I can feel literally my client's guide bitching to my guide about what she wants to have happen in this situation, or he wants. It's usually a woman. I don't know why. So I can sometimes feel the chatter of the guides. Like I can feel the information going between their guide and my guide. And if I want to pay attention to that, I'll get more stuff. Every now and then I will have, so when you get goosebumps, to me, goosebumps are angelic. So I was told that the angels will just sort of kind of bump your energy for goosebumps as a hell yeah or a Hail Mary. And I do get goosebumps quite often in readings, and the client will at the exact same time. So be like, I just got goosebumps. So do I, so there's something going on in that regard. Every now and then I will get an ascended master will tap me on the shoulder and make a surprise appearance. I have had Jesus come in, as I said on our Jesus show, but it was private, not in a reading. So I've had, some celebrities pop in, but for the most part, I feel like most of my wisdom is streaming straight from the Akashic record on the client. So I'm pulling Akashic record information from the client from the library. And then I think the other part of it is my higher self. I think I'm giving myself stage notes backstage. Like, okay, don't fuck this up. Tell the client. I think it's me.
Yeah. Another version of yourself. Yeah, I've heard that too. Like a lot of times our guides are different versions of ourselves in different realms or different parts of our energy we need to pull in specifically. And I have also had like beings that were here in physical form. Like my dog led me to this woman when we were at a vet appointment who gave me a card that said, "You're a divine appointment." It stuck with me. I went home, I put it in my journal, and I found an entry where during a meditation, a woman who looked exactly like her had stepped forward to guide me. So it was almost as though those were the dots there too. It was physical form, but also, hey, pay attention. This is your purpose. Now go back and see the validation from past meditations and experiences. We're all here with you all the time. And I was never able to figure out where that woman came from or where that card came from. There was no advertisement to join a church or anything. So, there's a lot of ways they'll reach out to us, both in physical form and in our meditation and dreams, like you said, Chris.
Well, animals.
The goosebumps are always kind of confirmation, the goosebumps, you know what I'm saying? Especially if you're trying to get a read on something, I feel like the goosebumps is a confirmation that, yes, you're on target too. I've noticed that a lot with my guides when I'm trying to decipher something. They do the goosebumps as a confirmation, like, yes, or a celebratory, like, yeah, you got it, So those are also good to understand the confirmation bumps.
Yes.
There's a lot of confirmation bumps. Every now and then my dead relatives will come in. And you know what really happens a lot, which is funny, is I usually get a lot of my messages during readings. So I'll be like in the reading, like, yep, the client is lazy, and so are you. Like they'll include like I'm like, fuck, they'll include stuff about me at the same time as a client. One thing I've noticed with the angels, are extremely efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Like they say like the minimal words that helps everyone at the same time. And that's how you can sort of detect an angel message, like from a logic perspective, just a logic perspective, to know that it's angels talking. They'll usually say something very simple, profound, and applies to everyone. And if you look for that structure, that's usually an angelic intervention, I found. Is it always the angels for you, Devon?
No, not at all. I mean, I have like my grandmother is a huge guide for me. She was here in physical form. She was a very big guide for me. She took me on my path. But then after she passed away, about 5 years after she passed away, she came to me in a dream and said, "Get to work. You need to start bringing this in as your work." And then she still comes to me in dreams and guides me with decisions, with, hey, you need to look into this. So we're gonna, I know, get more into our family that's with us here in a little bit, but yeah, I do think it's really valuable, if you're wondering who your guides are, or if you connect with them, to just write down the feelings and symbols you see and start tracking that, because as you said, Christopher, you do start to decipher, like, my guide always comes to me with this message. My grandmother always comes in this way. And it makes it easier for you to see how you get it, because we do all get it differently.
Yeah. There's a sign language between, your guides and you. And they often, one thing that's very interesting is they pull from my own memories. So they'll be like, that time when you were a kid and you did that shit, that's what the client's doing. Like they will use my own life as a means of communicating and examples, which is tricky because I don't want to share that with the client. So I hear that. I have a lot of conversation the client never hears. I quite often have stuff where they'll say, no, don't tell the client, but he's going to divorce her. And I'll be like, fuck. Okay. So I sort of, so there's a whole relationship there, a working relationship that builds over time. And I'm finding, I just noticed at Mount Shasta, I had Saint Germain come to me in the morning when I was waking up, and I didn't realize, I put it together at Mount Shasta, like, oh, that's the person who's been coming to me when I wake up my whole life. Like, so I also noticed, like, they have their witching hours, some of them I've noticed. And that's one way that I know that it's a particular guide. So now I know if I'm waking up and I'm getting instructions about metaphysics, it's probably Germain, because it's a weird moment because you're half awake and half asleep. So you're not like in your normal kind of thing. But I will say this, and let's talk about this. It's a feeling, as far as the experience as a human is concerned, every guide, every spirit has a distinct feeling to them, has a distinct feeling. And what you do is you begin to memorize the feeling of your guide's present. And that's how I noticed, I first learned this when I started doing readings, because at first I would type up all these notes and try to have all these notes I went over in the reading. But then after a while, I lose track of the notes, and I would just go stream like a reading out of nowhere. And I was kind of surprised, like, where's this coming from? But it was undeniable. I called it the zone, but it was a distinct feeling that I would feel. And if I felt that feeling, it meant I was plugged in and I had access to knowledge. And so from that point forward, whenever I do a reading, I deliberately plug into that feeling before the reading. And that's been my go-to since. What are your methods?
Yeah, I'll go. I watched a podcast the other day, and it was a guy. He didn't have a near-death experience, but his life flashed before his eyes. He was in a situation in his life, and he was talking about how he saw all these people, like all these people in his life that were all around him, and he saw this connection between all the people, and they were like, why did you flip me off when you were driving down the road, and why did you do this, and why did you do this to me? And he's like, you're only doing it to yourself. And he the point of his story is he was talking about reacting to people who do whatever to you. You're basically doing it to yourself, and how everybody is just like a little part of yourself. So I almost went off on someone in the comments today, and I didn't, because of that. And so just like I was talking about, sometimes I watch something like an interview like that, and in that moment this morning when I read a comment, that popped into my head. So now that I'm older and smarter, I always listen to those things whenever they pop into my head.
Yeah, I find that for my own information, for me, I don't know who that guy is, but he's a smartass. He's always messing with me. It's probably me, knowing me. Like I said, I think it's my higher self screwing with my lower self. But like, usually the warning messages for me are very quiet. Like, don't do that. It's like very, very quiet. And if I've learned to like recognize, I've memorized what it feels like when that personal message comes through for me. But I still don't catch it sometimes because I'm so animated in what I'm doing. And then later back, I'm like, damn it, I had a feeling. And I just ran right over it, Scott, how do you plug into your psychic awareness?
I mean, it's just kind of, it's there, right? And I, like you said, awareness consists of awareness, right? So I think a lot of times like, we think that our guides are always trying to get to us, and we fail to realize our own power of deciphering the signs and the manifestations around us. Like, for example, like I'm blurry tonight, so that's a sign. I might have to restart too, because it's kind of getting on my nerves a little bit. But I think that when we look at everything we're doing, like in our lives, we tend to think like our guides are always trying to get to us too. And sometimes we have that own built-in discernment of ourselves too, that we're trying to get to ourselves. I realize I'm my best guide a lot of times too. And so like what Chris was saying about feeling things out and looking around, like the little things we react to in life, right? And how like we get triggered about things. That's there isn't a guide, but it's a reflection that can guide us, right? And letting us know the things that trigger us, the things we need to work on. So I always tend to think that life itself is a mirror. Life in itself is a message, and guiding us in everything that we do in our lives. That everything's there for a reason. And so I just think even this universe itself is a massive guide. So yes, like when I'm tapping in and looking at things, there's always a feeling of sensation. There's always a feeling of understanding where. I think it's important to understand where the information is coming from too, because a lot of times come from your own soul, can come from your guides, can come from the universe itself. So I always tend to kind of like allow myself to elaborate more on the different diversities of connection in that sense.
Yeah, I think that's powerful.
You know what I'm saying?
And there are. Go ahead.
I would say I know Angel. Call him Devon Angel again. I know that you're an angel communicator, but I'm sure that you understand too the different how almost like spirit is embedded in everything in our lives. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. That's I was just about to say, like, a really good thing to try if you are trying to identify is do some automatic writing. And if you don't know how to do that, there's tons of videos online how to practice automatic writing with the meditation. But keep track of what you're getting and just try connecting one at a time with what, like, let's say you do feel like your grandma is one of your guides or is there, then I would be very intentional about asking, like, versus like if you have an image of like this big, strong, like superhero that's your guide, then I would be very intentional about that. And that'll help you too. Cause like you said, Scott, yeah, it does come in through differently. They develop a language with me. They know when they send a certain animal past my window, that's going to get my attention. I'm going to stop and go, okay, I have a feeling what they're trying to tell me here. And, I don't make assumptions about it, but I stay open to more signs. And then you can ask for more signs. You can say to your guides, like, send me more for confirmation.
I agree with what Scott said. The entire matrix is confirmation. It's all part of the messaging system. And, it's funny. I had a
Can
reading
we fix my matrix here? Because my matrix is going cray. Can we fix it? Come on, guys. You were upset about technology before you even came on. This is your magic backfiring. I was actually, let me tell you something. I was actually at peace, had a great session before this, and all of a sudden things just like bloop, 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 bloop. I'm like, what's going on here? So maybe I think Daryl said in the comment section, he's like, it's 116 degrees, everything's melting. So that could be it too.
That could
the
be,
wires
that could
are
definitely
melting.
It's okay, but you're half in heaven and half here today. That's I think
there we
it's
go.
poetic.
That's
really.
what it is. Half and
It's
half.
sort of like, yeah,
it works.
I want to bring up the idea too of negative guides. So there are entities that are tricksters. I don't know if it's trying to do evil or not. But I do think that there is a lot of suggestion. So a lot of people don't realize. And here, my tip to starting to be aware of your guides is for you to pay attention to your own thoughts, like to watch your own consciousness all the time for patterns. And you will see, and I've seen it in readings even too, like young readers cannot distinguish between the tricksters and the spirit guides. That's why they tell you with your novice, pray in, put up a wall, put up a firewall, clear the connection, because unless you do that, like, Metatron, Michael, and it has to be every time you have to reconnect, every morning you have to reconnect, because your commandments only last until you fall asleep, by the way, in the Matrix. So, but if you don't make that like commandment to have anything unwelcome, not a part of the conversation, I'll see just one sentence, one little word, one little thing. In some cases, it will be something mean, like something kind of mean or something that I know would trigger the client. And I'm like, who the fuck, who is this, interjecting a dash of negativity in that moment. But there's definitely guides that will mislead, and I think that's why Chris Reck's going to hell for working with the devil.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think they say that when the devil wants to get to you, he sends you a short brunette with stomach issues. So you got to watch out for that. Yeah, but no, see, I think that what happens is I think the negative guides are people, and it's like your inner voice. I've had so many of these experiences in my life where, I'll meet a person or whatever. I get like this weird feeling. I'll still interact with them, whether it's like in a relationship or just a personal relationship. And like something will always tell me like, this isn't right, and I always get like sucked up into those situations, and it's almost like they're too good to be true. And, it's always people that are like too good to be true. Right. And I think, I never listen to my inner voice in those moments, and I always regret it later. So I think that they are kind of like negative guides, if you want to call them that in a sense. But I think a lot of those times, like those people have pointed something out about me that needs to be corrected, fixed, or, something else that I'm like ignoring somewhere else in my life.
Yeah.
Dead relatives keep bitching after they're dead.
Yeah.
I have through psychics like Scott, my grandmother still saying the same shit she said to me when she was alive. And sometimes relatives are very opinionated and they're interjecting their opinions. Scott?
What I was gonna say is like I kind of agree with Chris too, because I think that we all have negative aspects of ourselves, and I think that sometimes if I'm getting a negative aspect in a session with somebody, I'm usually picking up on their battle in a sense. So not so much that it's actually a negative entity trying to influence. I'm like, they're actually that's the demon they're battling in a sense. So I find a lot more learning curves, and I think sometimes, not that I'm saying there's negative guides or guides out there to inflect any type of chaos in that sense. I do feel that there are guides that if you're not getting it in the positive light, they're going to try to wake you up with some negativity. So I feel like there's a lot of that type of let's blow the horn on things because you're not getting it. So it might come out in a negative fashion. And I would say a lot of times people don't learn unless it's negative a lot of times. So I tend to think that spirit's always pure. But I think those who passed on, I think a lot of times, spirit that's passed on does harbor the same personality in the physical life. So they do come through in that sense and say, hey, it's me. Right. And they want to interfere the same way in their physical persona. So, but I do think the soul has evolved more. Like Christopher, your grandmother has evolved more, but she's playing the physical game with you still. Right. In the same format in that sense. So, but her soul has definitely evolved.
She wants you to marry a Polish girl. It's going to get a reading. They're like, your grandmother wants you to marry a Polish girl.
But that can be such great validation too when they do that. And, I do think that when it comes to the more negative energies and negative guides, it's something we attract. Like I was told once that I had a negative guide that came to me when I was around 15. Well, that's an age where most kids are pretty insecure. And so just through the law of attraction on its own, you could be attracting that kind of negative mindset, that voice in your head that's telling you you're not good enough. But I even have a funny story of a guide when I was really working on my psychic abilities. I was like practicing every day. I was practicing lucid dreaming. In my dreams, I was practicing like flying and jumping off buildings. And I had this one guy that would stand there with a hat down over its face, smoking a cigar and telling me, try again, kid, you're not good enough. Over and over, I'd be practicing. And here's this guide telling me, come on, kid.
Did you figure out who that was?
No, well, it went away after I finally said, enough. Like, this is why I'm doing this. You're not helping me no more. And I called the angels in, I cleared it. I cut cords, and we'll see what happens tonight now that I've talked about him. No, it was like out of an old country Western film kind of a thing,
I've had some dead celebrities come in. I said that. And they've told me why. Because I'm listening. They're like, you're listening, and we think you're responsible. I've had a couple of them, and it's interesting. The weird ones that come in, I don't even name drop dead celebrities, but we will have in our next series. But I do think I do have every now and then a foreign kind of energy come in, and I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know if it's alien. I don't know. I've also on my other, on Astro Mingle, I've interviewed some other types of psychics, and one, Alicia Powers, she works all with ninth dimensionals. She has no guides. She goes straight to the ninth dimension and talks to creator beings. So I kind of feel like to some degree, these are relationships that are established before you incarnate. And so you sort of have your team already picked out. Another thing that happens quite often is when you lose someone close to you, like a husband or a child in this life, it's because they were actually a guide in disguise. I find this, I see this all the time. What happens is there are soul agreements where they're like, look, I don't want to incarnate, but I will. And they come down for you, they build a heart bond, and then they die because your job is to connect to heaven. And it's easier to connect to heaven when you have a heart bond to someone that's in heaven. And so some guides are literally, kamikaze souls that come here, get close and die for you to be your guide. I can't tell you how many clients I have who lost a son or lost a relative who are now their guides. And they're like telling me to tell them, like, I'm their guide. I'm telling you, let her know. And and they'll tell me all the time that was always the plan, which helps the client because the client's grieving. And it's like, this is the plan from the beginning. I think we're going to be so much better off when we stop having amnesia when we're born. And I don't know what you guys think about this, but I feel like it's going to be fading out amnesia. Like kids now are already like, we have a person on our staff. Her son knows his past lives. He's familiar with it. He talks about it all the time to her. So I'm seeing more and more of this trend. And what I'm pointing out there is like, maybe by the end of our life, we'll start to see children who are always aware of their guides and aware of who their guides are and aren't, and maybe know them by name from the very beginning. And we just start to incorporate it into our consciousness. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I call contractual. It's contract. There's a lot of contractual. Am I being heard here? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you saying contrary or contractual?
I'm confused here, but there's a lot of I say contractual. A lot of these agreements are contractual. I've seen a lot of that when I'm channeling. When the loved one has passed on, it's like a contract done before the incarnation. Knowing this, because through that contract, like you were saying, that helps the person live their physical life as intended with that support. So a lot of times I tell my clients, this is a contractual passing. So it's hard for people to digest that too. But
right. Yep.
You guys mind if I restart my modem? Because I think it's so delayed. Do you guys mind if I just check out for a second to restart?
I think he
might disappear.
We might never see you again, Scott.
You guys are playing.
It's not bugging us. It's only bugging you.
Yeah.
Well, the show will go on.
You guys are freezing on my end. That's why. So I'm missing things.
You're just playing the spirit guide in this episode. Half in, half out. With animal guides, I was going to say this. We have a guest coming on soon, Bernadette King. And Bernadette in a reading, that's beautiful. That's her deck.
Right here. It's her lovely arc deck. Yes.
She has animal spirit guides come to her third eye. She gave me a reading and she's like, okay, Badger's here now. I'm like, Badger's here? And she gave me a whole reading of all the animals that presented to her in her third eye as guides. So she has animal guides that she reads for you, and it was completely in the animal kingdom. It was really interesting. I'd never seen that before, Bernadette. I'd always seen animal guides like, a crow flies in front of me like, but she's literally having the symbols come to her in her third eye.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's everyday news for you guys. All right.
We know this already.
Yeah, whatever, Witecki.
Well, we can talk more about that with the family tree, right?
We totally can. And we will be talking a bit more about that and other people that other ways of guides talking to us. But first, we have a sponsor, and I guess that's our cue to God. God, who's our sponsor today? God.
Stage. And here we are. Funny enough, you are, Christopher. Today's sponsor is SeriousJoy.com. Check out their new website. A portion is now free to the public. Try their personal sensei service the first month for just $3.99. For more information, visit SeriousJoy.com. Anything you'd like to add, Christopher?
Thanks, God. There's a lot I want to say here. Um, actually, what I want to say is Serious Story we just put out a new version of our service, which took us 3 years. But it's beautiful and we're slowly packing it in. But the important point to say is that it's now free. We have a homepage now that's free, which may sound not like a big deal, but it is, because we now report on the weather for the next 4 days on the homepage. We report on all the planetary things that are going on in the, we report our show. This show will be on the homepage. So please come down and check it out. That's all I want to say. And if you'd like to go the full 9 yards, $3.99 for the first month, and just see how magical the messages are that come across your phone. They are truly magical. It'll feel like I am spying on you. Seriously. It will. Most people cannot believe how accurate the texts are. All right. Thanks, God. Our next topic is the soul family tree. Now, we thought this would make a good complement to today's show, talking about soul family trees. And I'll just throw out the first talk. I mean, we feel like there are soul families in heaven. There are generations of souls that incarnate together. So there's like the World War II generation. That was my grandmother and my grandfather. Then there's our generation. These are, from what I understand, these are our soul families. We grow together with these same souls, and we interact on the ends and beginnings of our lifetime with these other souls. But our soul family is pretty much the ones incarnating. And in my opinion, it's everyone here. But it's also, my recent relatives that have passed on. And sometimes they serve as guides. How do you all look at soul family? What's your definition? I'll start with Devon.
Yeah, I definitely consider soul family all the people we contracted with before we incarnated, our children, our grandparents, our third grade teacher, our mailman, the guy that broke our heart. We're all part of the soul family designed to have these certain experiences, pets. So similar to like we had talked in past shows about soulmates, but it can be that person that you just barely brushed by getting on the bus and them getting off. And, they complimented your shirt and it gave you that lift that you needed to go into that meeting and feel confident for that interview. So there's a lot of really minor nuances that we could get caught up in, but I also see them as people like here we are here at Leading Out Loud and our team at Serious Joy. We all agreed to come here and do work together as well. So we agreed to have this show and be here at this time right now. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's, I think everything you just said, like our family, the people around us. And, I find like the people that I really think are soul family are the people where it just like comes together like this, just came together, meeting Christopher and then Devon, or actually I think I met Devon first and then through Devon, I met Christopher. And so it's like, it's just weird how it all like kind of fell into place. And so I look at those as like the real soul family connections, the things that just, kind of fall into place and happen magically.
Yes,
totally. Although I think I've incarnated with most of you before. Chris may be on another planet, but
not here.
Probably not here, but you are familiar. There's a familiarity there, but I haven't seen a past life with you yet. I mean, when I was at Unite the Light, I felt like all those people were my family.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
And I felt like we were all been off on assignments for like 500 to 1,000 years. It felt like, I kind of feel like the light workers went off and siloed and became like one light worker per family and like scattered across the world. I think Scott got caught up in the Roman Catholic Church for a few lifetimes, and then I feel like we've all come back together. I feel, from what I understand now, I'm talking galactic, but the soul family that we are, I think, is Atlantis and Lemuria. I think our soul family goes to Atlantis, Lemuria. I think we separated after Atlantis, but I feel like we're coming back now. One thing I also feel too is, I've been told this by my guides many times, but the original Atlantis bad soul family and good soul family are both here in this lifetime. So from what I've been told, the bad actors were the same bad actors in Atlantis, and the good actors are the same good actors in Atlantis too. And that's because we have to repeat Atlantis because it was a mistake, right? So the karma has to repeat, which I believe is happening now. But again, these are all soul family dynamics that I'm talking about.
I mean,
All
they
right.
don't have to be past life too. Soul connections and soul family can be created. We can create them in this lifetime too, like people that we haven't had previous incarnations with. So I think a lot of people fail to realize that we can also create that in this incarnation too. That it don't have to be from previous lifetimes as well. There could be new souls that you're meeting in this lifetime that become your soul family too. So there's also that extension as well.
Yeah, I can think of a couple that I think are new because to this day I didn't know them in past lives, and now they're like
Yeah.
family.
Right.
I mean, I think I've been acquiring soul family for centuries, right? Like now
Right.
you're part of my soul family. Now you are.
Mhm.
You
Right.
know, yeah, it's interesting. I also think soul family. I do think there is, going back to the guides thing. I do believe every human being has a guide assigned to them in heaven, whether you talk to them or not. They seem to be like a coordinator. And I get the feeling, I don't know, this is just a feeling. I get the feeling they're all soul family. It's like maybe in our, once we graduate Earth, maybe we become guides for Earthlings or ascended masters or whatever. But I kind of feel like everyone in the heaven staff seems to all know each other. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
it's not like a bus stop. It's like, it's a staff that's always there.
Yeah, I had an Akashic Records lady tell me once I've had 2 lifetimes as a guide, and it was new information to me. And the explanation was that's one of the ways that we will get so much studying done on how we want to incarnate next is we're helping someone else along the
Oh,
way.
that's cool.
Yeah, and then that helps us structure our next incarnation, and then
That's
usually
fine.
we bring
Yeah.
that person in. So
I felt
That's
that
interesting.
too. I felt that too. It's like almost we're clearing karma in a sense too by helping others, right? Our own karma
Right.
and others' karma. And so yeah, it does set us up for next life. Yeah, I've heard that too, and I've been shown that as well. You know,
Twin flames don't always. My twin flame, and we've talked about it. She rarely incarnates. She doesn't like it. She hates Earth. She just comes down when she has to, basically. So, and from what she's told me, and what our guides told us is, and when she's not on Earth, she's my guide. Like my twin flame is my primary guide. So I don't know. Not this life, thank God. Just kidding. Bitching at me from heaven all day long.
Yeah.
It's not fun. Pick up your shoes. All right. So, one question: do you all feel like someone can get kicked out of a family?
No,
not?
I don't think so, because I think it's like we're
Well,
all
physically,
really
maybe.
I think we're all part of like one bigger soul. So I don't think we can actually, unless I don't know, maybe
Get rid
if
of
you do
any of
something
us.
super, super bad or something. So I would say no.
No,
That's
and
like yeah. Go ahead.
well, just in one of the Michael Newton books I read, Destiny of Souls, there was a session that he did in hypnotherapy with his client where one of the people did bow out of that lifetime. Like there had been enough pain from some trauma that person said, I'm going to sit these next few ones out with you. I'm going to go work with this other team for a while. And it's just more of a, like, my soul needs more healing and more growth before I'm willing to reincarnate and go through that situation again with you. And maybe even they're waiting for that other person to grow a little more too, by not having them as a crutch. Because sometimes I think if we always incarnate with the same, like you said, twin flame, Christopher, that can become a crutch and we don't grow.
Right.
That's for sure in this case. I'll tell you that. I know sometimes from the same books you're referring to, Devon, that sometimes you have parents that are completely out of your soul family. That sometimes you interject with like your biological Earth family. You sometimes you separate from your soul family for a moment to get contrast, or to get an experience that's not available in the family.
Like an adoption, you mean?
Adoption, yeah.
Yeah, like an adoption for sure. Or it's like, and I've read these clients. They're like, I'm like nothing like anyone in my family, and their guides are like, yeah, you are incarnating. This is your lifetime away.
Got it.
From that pattern. Oh yeah, Scott, you're looking good now.
Oh wow, he came back.
Did I come back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, look at this face.
Look at
But I think
It's great.
you can see me now, right? My pimples.
Yeah.
But I
We
think that,
see you.
sometimes I find that people have actually found their soul family by being adopted, actually. And so and I think that sometimes find that people incarnated with like parents that were like very disastrous and detrimental in a sense to their physical growth, so we think, and they have to go through the experience of being somewhat abandoned, and then they find their soul family through adoptions. I've seen that happen too.
That happens too, yeah.
Because whatever karma they had to learn about being abandoned by a family member, right, and then the soul family comes in as an adoption to help them to evolve from that. I've seen that a lot too.
Yeah, I see with adoptions, I see a lot. My third eye, sometimes they just want the DNA. Like they were choosing the DNA, they were choosing those things, and they were never going to stay with the biological family. And the agreement in heaven was they were never going to keep you, and you knew that. But I also see it usually plays. But if you look at the chart, you see like karma with abandonment, which is like Chiron in the 5th house or Chiron in the 8th house, if you want to know the symbolism. So quite often adopted people already have abandonment issues from past lives.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
Or they've actually abandoned their own children in the past life, and they're just re-encountering what that feels like.
Yeah.
That happens a lot too. Yeah. That I was saying the other day about that to someone. It's like I was saying it this morning actually on a show. They were saying a lot of people are like, why did this happen to me? Why was I suffer? Why am I a victim? Why did I have this thing happen in my childhood? And I look on their chart. I'm like, because you did it to someone else.
Right.
In the past life. This is the what comes around goes around. Like a lot of people don't realize that bad things that happen to them because they had to be the receiving end of the bad thing. And here's the thing. Let's say you did have an accident, like something completely random. You didn't deserve it at all. Let's say someone trespassed against you. I believe in a future life, you will have to trespass against another person. Because I believe you have to experience the full 360 of the storyline.
Well, it's about what I say about the dark side, right? So
you in the dark side, black hat, black shirt, dark.
A
white microphone. That's paradox.
Yeah, white mic.
Yeah.
See, I'm the one with the most white here, actually. Just look here. I'm the one with the most white here. But I agree. Like I tell people all the time, like, and people don't understand. People don't understand too. Like when they're going through that trauma or that karma that they're going through, like why me? They don't realize that that's actually going to get them out of that energy, right? Because they experienced that before. They're going through it now. The experience of such and the evolving of such will make sure you don't have to repeat that again. So it's saving you to experience it. So a lot of people want to resist all that. And I said, please process that. Please, go through that. Allow yourself to evolve from it, so you don't have to repeat it again. Your soul will expand from that.
That's like what they were saying at the beginning with the energy shift for this week about crying over spilled milk. I mean, a lot of times our soul really wants to figure out how to get out of that victimhood on its own. It really is like, I can do this on my own. And so they're repeating this victimhood, trying to figure out the pattern and get out of it. And if you can look at it, like you just said, Scott, from that perspective of, well, I did that. What did I learn from it? Let's keep going. Then you don't have to keep going through it.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time for Shoot the Shift. That was a fun segue, wasn't it? And we're going to hand this off to Scott. Scott, we've had a bunch of questions come in.
I missed them all because everything was lagging for me. So one says, how does a novice connect with who doesn't feel connected currently? And what are each of your strongest clairs? Okay. I'll start with the first one too. Like, how do we connect with those who are novice? And I think everyone thinks they're a beginner. You're not a beginner. You're a spiritual being to begin with. So you've done this before. So when you detach yourself from the idea that you're a beginner or you're just learning this, understand you are a spirit and that you have a spirit to connect to first. And then when you allow yourself to open up and make that connection, I feel like then you're able to see spirit that's connected with your spirit. So you're not a novice. You might not have been practicing that, but just like any other thing that you practice, you became more insightful, more mastery over. What would you say, Devon, as far as, would you say for those who are novice and want to learn how to connect more? What would your perspective be on that?
Oh, everything you just said. First of all, step into your power. Own your power, that you were born with these divine gifts and you were always going to realize them. That's why you're here watching the show right now. And I do recommend the automatic writing or the journaling, and keeping track of the feelings you get when you're trying to connect, the visuals you see, the numbers you see. because hindsight is really, really powerful for that. But again, don't try to do it all at once. So if the question is, I really want to connect with my passed away grandmother, but I don't feel connected, that's where I would really sit down and set that intention. There's tons of really high vibe meditations out there on YouTube. You can look up. Always use your intuition. If it doesn't resonate, go find a different video, but check in. Right. Be very intentional about, okay, but I want signs from my great grandmother. So call them in, and you do have to be patient. I mean, they're busy. They're doing their work too. So I get that a lot too. I'm sure you have, Scott. Like, they can't just, ring the doorbell the minute you want them to show up, right?
That's true. I tell my clients that, because they're like, I prayed and nothing came to me right away. I'm like, well, like, just like a text message, you send it, it takes a time to respond. And, a lot of times it takes spirit time to like configure reality for those signs to show up. And so we got to be patient. And I think that for some reason too, I don't want to go off topic here either with this, and this helps with people trying to connect with spirit, is that you have to develop that newfound communication, that new relationship. You have to develop that, and it takes time to, especially for you to understand that, it's not just them always having to reach out to you. You got to do the work reaching out to them too. So if you understand the communication, like, a lot of people in the spiritual sense pick up the phone and hang right up. And it's like, pick up the phone, figuratively speaking, talk to your loved ones, and allow themselves time to respond back to you. Do a feeling. The next question was, different clairs, like clairsentient, claircognizant, clairvoyance. You'll feel the different impulses from spirit. You'll be able to understand like how they're starting to communicate to you now. But that takes time.
Right.
So I'm glad you said that. A lot of people say, I'm not seeing a sign right now. It's like, well, let them respond differently in the way they do now in their own way.
Or they get stuck on it. Well, I just know they would send me a pennies from heaven,
Oh, yeah.
and instead they're coming in your dream, or
Don't tell them what to do.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is we get really focused.
Too.
What's that?
Yeah.
I'm saying tough as a medium, because they'll say, I told them they're going to show a penny, and then they die, and they don't bring the penny up in the session. It's like, well, what about the penny? Everything was so spot on, but the penny. I'm like,
yeah,
clearly they don't care about the penny anymore.
Or it just wasn't going to be significant, or they missed it because they were so caught up in their own grief, right? We see that too, or just they're just busy, they just missed it. So it's
that's
okay, we
true.
gotta get to you a different way. Yeah.
That's my point. I have always been psychic since I was a boy. I just thought I was remarkably talented and was brilliant, had these answers come out of nowhere. For me, psychic abilities and guides was not like building a relationship to them. It was finding in myself where I had been ignoring them all along. I had been calling their guidance my imagination. I've been calling their guidance, just internal dialogue. And there was a moment, it was a reading I got with another astrologer, and she was like, you're crazy psychic and you have strong abilities. But she told me I was dismissed it. And I realized, oh my God, okay, this thing inside me, I thought this was just me being goofy, but it turns out, yeah, it is information I never came up with. One of the main signs that you can tell as a guide is you didn't know it before. If the information is something you didn't know before, it obviously didn't come from you.
It's true. And I always said too about imagination. Am I just imagining it too? It's just like you're imagining everything. Like imagination is reception and creation. So you have to be in an imaginative space to receive messages from spirit, right? So I always say, understand if you're receiving, you'll know, like you said, it's not your information. It's an intelligent entity, right? You'll feel that into intellect, or is it your creation, of imagination? So we have to go into the imagination to connect and to channel.
Well, imagination as in creativity. So imagination is sort of spirit's ability to draw pictures. That's how spirit does Pictionary all the time. It's constantly your soul draws a picture. That's your imagination. But when you want to imagine something, it's a totally different process than the way these messages come in. When I want to imagine something like, let me think about a house and what color could it be? And so when we create on Earth, it's very obvious we're creating. When you get a message in your imagination. Yeah, go ahead.
But I'm talking about the imaginative space, Christopher. Like there's a space when you go into imaginative space, it's a level of spiritual plane that you can create and also receive. So I would say when you get into the imaginative space, it might be you see that there's an export and an import, like you're creating or you're receiving. So I've noticed that when I get into that space, it's a different level of, I would say, spiritual dimensionality, right? When we're creating the physical world, yes, we can see that we're creating something very tangibly. But when I go into meditation, I'm in that imaginative space, I can create or receive. Why are you laughing, Devon? What's
precisely because we're being told to let Chris talk.
Oh,
our director is saying Chris Reck needs to say something.
I'm speechless. That's it.
He needs a card to speak.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is, everyone starts somewhere and you can grow as much as possible in this lifetime. So, I think everyone has to start somewhere. Just practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pay attention.
That's
Pay
good.
attention.
Yeah,
Pay attention to what.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you have a thought cross
That's
your
it.
mind, pay attention to that thought. When that thought crossed your mind, pay attention to the thought. Did you
Yeah.
have a feeling accompanied with the thought? Was it something that you were thinking about prior? Did it pop out of nowhere? So if an idea pops out of nowhere, it wasn't part of your train of thought. Quite often, an idea that interrupts you is a psychic message as well. So you look for
Yeah.
these patterns in watching your own consciousness to decipher. I think we have time for one more. Oh, no, we don't. Time's up.
Time's up.
We answered as many questions as we could. All right, it's time for Psychic Roulette, and that is Mr. Reck.
Yes, CNN published a story that that scientists have confirmed that the Earth's core has slowed down so much that it is moving backwards. So my question to all of you is, are we going to experience a magnetic pole shift in this lifetime, or is it going to be the next? I'll go to Scott because he's back.
No. I enjoyed sitting back a little bit. Are we going to experience a magnetic pulse? I mean, in this lifetime, as far as I'm 42, so it could, I'll go based on that. I really think, it's possible. I don't get a huge pull in the no, right? So I think it's possible, possibly in 30, 40 years, I feel. That's kind of my read on it. Very simple, But I don't feel like it's soon, but I also don't feel like it's so far out there. Devin, what do you think?
I don't feel like it. I feel like, what is that discovery about the Earth is already moving faster? They figured that out. When was that? That's a whole nother article we should talk about. But I don't feel that. I feel like this is a distraction. This is an attempt to get us to not keep looking for what's going on. And I just think it's fake. So no.
You think or feel?
I feel this is fake.
Okay.
Or could it be representation of something else that's less major, maybe? You know what I mean?
Right.
There's some
It just
truth
feels like a
behind
cover
it.
up or something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I feel.
I feel it is already happening. I feel the myth of pole shifting is this idea that it'll happen in 5 minutes and destroy the Earth. I think that's bullshit.
Right.
I feel like it's a gradual thing, and it who knows when it's done. But I feel like it's already moving. It does do this. We have it through history that it's moved. But I think we're under the wrong assumption that it's just going to snap a finger and turn out all the lights.
Right.
I don't feel like anything like that's going to happen. I feel like it's already on course.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a meteor supposed to hit us. How many times? It's going to be quick and hit us. I mean, we've always been kind of perpetuated fear like that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a whole nother topic there, because I've been told from Wendy Kennedy that aliens have stopped meteors many times, and aliens have allowed meteors to go through a couple times too. That there are extra influences that sort of decide maybe Earth needs a reset. In fact, the big dinosaur one is allegedly rumored was actually an alien ship that brought that particular meteor. That's the latest I've heard from the psychic gossip from the mediums who talk to aliens. With that, another time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
What do you think about the poll?
Chris didn't pull a card out.
Chris, yeah.
I mean, the asteroid can't hit soon enough, but what I'll say there. But we have the temperance card. Temperance, I think something else is going to shift before there's a pole shift. So that's what I feel with temperance.
A pole shift?
There will be another change. There will be another change. You got me thinking about polls now, Scott. So that's the problem. There's going to be a different kind of shift before.
Yes, we know Biden's going to not run. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'm teasing. All right. Well, we'll see. I'm sure there's going to be, the Earth is alive and changing, so we'll have to see. She is alive. And she's actually also someone you can talk to as a spirit guide. All right, friends, super fun. That wraps up our show. We've had a great time with you tonight. We'll be back next week, and we'll close the show with God. Back to you, God.
Thanks for joining us on LOL, Leading Out Loud. You can catch us every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you're watching on YouTube, please be kind and do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell button so you're notified. And remember, word to the wise, I will be watching.
Oh,
remember, don't put up with the shift show. Lead out loud.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, we can